My name is David Burt. I'm the Premier and Minister of Finance for Bermuda, and I'm here at the Ethereal Summit talking to the blockchain enthusiasts, those persons that are part of the Ethereum family, talking about what Bermuda is doing to provide a platform for innovation in the blockchain space. Absolutely. Well, there was a number of announcements today, but I think the most major announcement from the Bermuda perspective is that we tabled our Digital Asset Business Act earlier today, and that act is the first act of legislation worldwide to regulate companies that operate in the digital asset space. And so for that, it will regulate wallet providers, it will regulate exchanges, it will regulate custom providers, and third-party providers. So for instance, people who want to set up businesses to offer services to those persons who are looking to do digital asset issuances. Bermuda is a great place for blockchain innovation because Bermuda is a great place for innovation overall. And from that perspective, I think that we have to look at Bermuda's history. We have always innovated. We've innovated in the areas of financial services. We've been pioneers in insurance. And that has basically taken us to a place where we've had something that happened in financial services, where we can apply the smart regulation that we have in Bermuda. And so where you can actually talk to the regulators, where you can figure out how to get this to work at a scale which it can be done locally and then scale globally. And that's what we've done in the insurance space. So from the blockchain space, what we're doing in Bermuda is that we want Bermuda to be that innovation hub as a country. So there's lots of different places which may have innovation hubs, lots of different cities, all the rest that may have innovation hubs. But Bermuda, we are self-contained, 20 square miles, 65,000 people. There is nothing you can innovate in that, and you can basically design your products well enough so you can scale them to the rest of the world. I think it might be difficult, and I think that's just the advantage of which Bermuda offers. We are very small, so we can be nimble. You can come to Bermuda, you can fly in out of JFK at a flight that leaves at 8 a.m. in the morning. You can be in Bermuda by 11, and you can meet with the regulators, you meet with the banks, you can meet with the service providers, you meet with the lawmakers, and be out on a flight in the evening. That's just what we provide, and it's difficult to mimic that just by the sheer size and scale of what the U.S. is. So if you're asking me what the United States can learn, I think it's difficult. I don't think the United States is getting any smaller, but I think that what we've done on our regulatory sphere is that we are small enough so that we can examine. So when you look at the regulatory sandbox, which will be part of our digital asset business regime, when you look at the regulatory sandbox, we'll be issuing licenses which will allow our monetary authority, which is the financial services regulator, to apply different conditions to different companies depending on the risk of what exists. And I think that's it. You can't do that at scale in the United States, but in Bermuda, it's what we do every day. I think the challenge is skepticism. It's skepticism globally. I was even speaking with some people before that said that someone had pitched Bermuda and they were just kind of, laughed it off. But the thing is that we have worked really hard, starting with our time where we first got the idea, worked through last year, went to the World Economic Forum, met more thought leaders in the space, started innovating and getting us to a place where we're now first in the world to introduce legislation that will actually govern these businesses. I think that from that perspective, that hasn't been a challenge. That's been good. But what has been the challenge is getting people to recognize what the future may hold, how we can actually do government better, how we can do healthcare better, how we can do voting better, how we can do citizenship better, how we can just do simple public services and identity better. That's a challenge because this is not easy stuff to understand. And even someone like myself with a technology background doesn't get it, but there are so many smart people in this space, and I just hope that they will look at what Bermuda has to offer and hope they'll be able to, innovate in the platform of which we built. I I love what Consensus is doing. I was fortunate through the company of whom we signed an MOU with today, Omega One. I was fortunate to get to meet with Joe Lubin and his team to talk about the things which we're doing in Bermuda. And I think that it's wonderful what the Ethereum project is doing. And for a place like Bermuda, which is where our base is financial services, when you're talking about enabling what Ethereum enables, it's certainly, from my perspective, it's a natural fit. So we look forward to continued engagement with Consensus. We look forward to seeing what more can be done inside this space, and hopefully there will be more things. And you said, how do I like this conference? Pretty good.
Please welcome Bermuda's Premier and Minister of Finance, the Honorable E. David Burt, and Rob Urban of Bloomberg.
I'm waiting for the fire. It's supposed to be a fireside chat. There's still no fire. So welcome, Premier Burt. You have taken some recent actions in your country that are pretty bold, I think. And so I guess we should just start with that.
Okay.
Well, actually, how is it?
How is it?
That you decided to become a blockchain island?
From the Bermuda perspective, we were pretty fortunate. I've been in office for about 10 months. And what took place actually was one of a company that was founded in Bermuda. It's called Hub Culture. And they had actually, I think it was my first week in office, they had an innovation campus in Bermuda where they were talking about blockchain. And it was something that I attended. And after those discussions, it was something they said we should try to move these things forward in Bermuda and turn it into a place where blockchain could succeed and blockchain-based businesses could succeed. So we started on that path then. So that was, I want to say, July. Came about on October. We started moving items forward. In November, we put together our working group. And we've done a lot of things since then.
We talked a week ago about when you decided to go to Davos, and it turned out that everybody at Davos was interested in blockchain, and everybody's always interested in Bermuda. You must know that by now. But
yes. In case you all have not been to Bermuda, you're welcome to come at any time, please.
But can you just tell the story of how that happened? Because I thought that was a great.
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of things happen in the technology space. I have a technology background, and some things happen by planning, and some things happen by chance. And if you're lucky, you'll be in the right place at the right time. So the same person, Stan, from Hub Culture, he invited us to Davos. Every year he does a stand there in Davos, and so he invited us there. So we went, and I want to say it was the last day. It was myself, it was my minister responsible for ICT, innovation, and policy, and someone from our business development agency. And what we said when we were there is that that last night, of course, was Davos, so there was a little bit of alcohol involved, and so things got a little bit loose. And my minister basically said, if you are serious about doing things in Bermuda and you want to help us build that, as they said, crypto island, you all can get on a plane and come to Bermuda, and we'll see you in Bermuda on Tuesday. And the funny thing enough, people got on a plane and they flew to Bermuda. And so I want to say it was that Tuesday, there was about 20 people in the room, so from the Bermuda way, and the reason why Bermuda is so unique is because we're only 65,000 people. So we don't have the federal government, and we don't have state government, so we don't have this person to deal with and this person, this person. We have one financial services regulator. You can talk directly in the same day. You can talk to the people who make the laws, you can talk to people who are responsible for regulating the laws, and you can talk to the people who can service your companies as you provide those services. So we got everyone in together. We got the regulators, we got the people who are writing our laws, we got our service providers, and we sat there with a whiteboard with the people who joined us from Davos and basically planned out what Bermuda's future could be, and if we were to start from scratch and build the ideal ecosystem, what would it look like? And so that was at the end of January, and in April, we introduced our first piece of legislation, which was an amendment to our Companies Act, which governed the issuing of new digital assets. And it was, so of course people will say ICOs, but it's not just ICOs. It is to cover any issuance of digital assets. So we don't discriminate between security tokens and all the rest. If you want to issue a digital asset, you can issue it underneath our structure. And our structure is flexible enough so that depending on the type of digital asset that you are issuing, you can go ahead and issue it there and be fully regulated. And then today, we in Parliament, I was not there unfortunately because I'm here with everyone at Ethereal, but we introduced the Digital Asset Business Act, which is the first piece of legislation in the world that will govern the service providers who do digital asset businesses. So that's exchange providers, wallet providers, custody providers, the entire gamut. And so we are the first country in the world. And so that was from February until today, we got all that done.
So
But thank you.
Can I ask you to break down a little bit of the detail of what happens? You were talking about digital assets, issuing digital assets. People talk about securities tokens versus utility tokens.
Yes.
Does your law differentiate? Does your law spell that out? Mm-hmm. And if so, what is the difference? How does it?
That's an excellent question. Because we started from scratch, we are able to look at the various challenges of which existed in other places. And that's one of the challenges of which we have right now. How does a digital asset, how do you classify it? Is it security, is it not? Is it something else? From the perspective which we took, we just had a broad definition of a digital asset itself. And then we allow ourselves, from a regulatory perspective, to make to set the certain rules on depending on how it is. So if you're marketing something as an actual security, that's fine. You can do that in Bermuda underneath our structure. We will just put more types of controls in place and guidelines on how you can go ahead and market that particular security. But we do not discriminate, because one of the things of which we've learned is that in order to be successful in innovation, you have to make sure that you're not too rigid in your regulation. You allow the flexibility for the regulator to say, well, in this particular instance, we can treat it like this, and in another instance, we can treat it like this.
So does the SEC know what you're up to here? Have you, or for that matter, Her Majesty's Customs or the IRS?
The SEC, Her Majesty's Customs, whoever may know what we're up to, they certainly, I'm sure they're paying attention to what it is that we're doing. But Bermuda has one of the most well-respected financial services regulators in the world. There are only two countries. Well, a lot of you may not know the history of Bermuda, but Bermuda is actually the third largest insurance center in the world, behind New York and London. And so we do a lot of financial services. So our regulator, there's only two countries in the world that have full regulatory equivalence with both the European Union and the United States, and that is Switzerland and Bermuda. So those are the only two countries that have it. So we have a decent regulator in Bermuda, and so our regulator understands financial services, and our regulator understands how you can look at a particular situation, and you don't have to over-regulate things. You can give the correct proportional touch of regulation, and that's what it is that we're doing.
It is quite striking that you are talking about passing regulations for token sales, for these kinds of things, at a time when the SEC has said, leave us alone, we're studying it, we'll get back to you, and with no real timeline. And in fact, what's happening in the US is there's a little bit of a debate about who is even the appropriate regulator. Is it the CFTC? Is it the SEC?
It would be easy for me to say, Rob, and I would hate to be too self-serving, but if you want to get away from those problems, we are only 90 minutes away from JFK. Wheels up, wheels down, it's 90 minutes.
Okay, so you're an island paradise. What else have you got,
I mean, but I think it's important when you think about Bermuda from the perspective of our history in innovation. And I think that that's something, because And it's very interesting, especially when you're going down this road, because people begin to think of it very risky. So of course everyone have heard, oh, crypto is bad, or what are the bad things which you're doing, oh, it's going to be the end of the world, those type of items. And it was interesting, our business development agency had an event in New York City last week. And one of the most famous Bermudians happens to be the chairman and CEO of AIG, Brian Duperreault. And he's a big insurance guy. And one of the things of which he was saying is that when we pioneered the insurance market in Bermuda in the late 80s, the same things that the graybeards at the time were saying about insurance are the exact same things that they're saying right now about the new world of digital assets. And because when you don't understand, you criticize things. But what we were able to do in Bermuda is to create that regulatory environment to allow companies to innovate, to allow people to introduce new products very quickly. And so from that aspect, we don't trap people in. You can introduce the new products, and I think that's the history. So we're just taking what we did in insurance, and we're just transferring that to the area of digital assets.
It's interesting you went there, because that was my next question, which is what does cryptocurrencies and blockchain have to do with the insurance industry? Mm-hmm. Is there a direct connection, or is it all just broadly financial services?
Well, I would say that there's, without question, a direct connection. And the direct connection is, of course, we know there's lots of different things. So when we say fintech, then people say insurtech, people say regtech, people say lots of things from that aspect. From the Bermuda model, what we are also doing is that part of the things that are under our Digital Asset Business Act is that we are creating what some countries do have already, which is how would I want to put it? A regulatory sandbox. That's it. So we have a regulatory sandbox. So under our Digital Asset Business Act, there's two types of licenses. You can be issued a full license, which means that you are fully able to go ahead and run your exchange, run your wallet, all the rest. But if you have something that might need a little bit more careful examination from a regulatory perspective, you'll get what's called a modified license, and that allows you to have direct access to our regulator and be able to work in a still regulated environment, however, be able to innovate your product in a small scale to make sure that it's fine for consumer or broader scale use for scalability, and then you can graduate from a modified license all the way to a full license under our new Digital Asset Business Act. But from the insurance perspective, we have a lot of insurance companies in Bermuda. And so because we have a lot of insurance companies in Bermuda, there have been companies that have been pushing forward insurtech, blockchain solutions, and different things insofar as risk as well. So it's a good tie-in. And so we're taking what we're doing there and expanding it to a broader area of digital assets.
Are there risks to Bermuda's reputation here? I mean, I think it's generally considered that Bermuda is not, Cayman, Vanuatu. Sorry. Mm-hmm. But you're talking a lot about regulation. It seems like you're putting your reputation at stake here, mm-hmm. based on how well you regulate. There have obviously been a number of scandals around crypto assets from the very beginning with Silk Road or hacked exchanges or those kinds of things. Is Bermuda gambling here? And to what extent did you talk about that when you decided to get into this?
It's an excellent question, Rob, and I think a lot of people will say that to an extent Bermuda is gambling, but the fact is that when there is no regulation, things like what you were talking about can take place. So from the Bermuda perspective, we recognize it as a risk. And we actually did, for a month period, stop incorporating companies who were looking to enter the digital asset space until we figured out exactly what it is that we're going to do. Because you are correct, it does present that risk. Bermuda has always had that very sterling reputation. As I said, there's only 2 countries that have regulatory equivalents with both the EU and the United States. So we guard that jealously. And that's, I think, the reason why we've taken this approach. We've moved so quickly because at the one instance, you want to make sure you protect yourself. But on the second instance, you don't want to miss out for the opportunities that are there for innovation. And from my country's perspective, my country suffered greatly in the financial crisis. So we had a long period of recession. there are still a significant less amount of jobs in Bermuda now than there was at the peak of in 2008. So we still have a long way to go insofar as making sure that we get our people back to be fully employed. But I think that's the beauty of this. The beauty of this is because we've been able to move so swiftly, because we've been able to use what we have already and transfer it into a new area, we're beginning to see fruits of that, where people are wanting to come to Bermuda, where people are recognizing that it is easy to do business in Bermuda, and that you can basically see everyone you need to see within a day, as opposed to trying to get in front of the SEC or get to a different person or deal with this state or that state or another state.
And still make it to the beach at the end.
Yes, absolutely. Or have a nice rum swizzle at the end of the day.
So, since we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks now, I have seen memorandum of understanding after memorandum of understanding.
Yes.
One of the big ones is Binance, the I think world's biggest crypto exchange.
Something like that. There's a debate.
There's a debate. Okay, so one of the biggest, and I guess they're on Malta and Bermuda. Is that their strategy?
I'm not going to speak to the strategy of Binance specifically, but what I would say is that.
So what did Bermuda get from the Binance?
From Binance, I mean, but I think that's interesting, and I say it's interesting because the crypto world is only so big. It is growing very quickly, but it's only so big, and so of course there's it's a joke, and I'm now seemingly getting caught up in the crypto circuit, so I'm getting very nervous. I have to drop off the crypto circuit and go back to making sure that I actually do some governing in Bermuda. But we literally, we were on a flight, so I was in Italy, and it was termed a Bellagio Blockchain Summit. And the funny thing is that 4 of the people who are at this summit, there are only 15 of us there, are speaking at Ethereal. So it's me today, and then there's 3 ladies that are speaking tomorrow. But the crypto community is not too big. So people will share their experiences of what they've had. So when people started coming to Bermuda, when we started welcoming people to talk to our regulators, to talk to us, to find out about what we're doing, and the people who came from Davos there, they start talking amongst their friends. And so someone had got in touch with the people from Binance, or saw them, I think it was probably in Dubai, and that led them to coming to Bermuda, and they liked what they saw, and they wanted to set up business there. And so from the perspective where we stand, we hold everyone to the same standard. And so we do not compromise our standards for everyone. So we put everyone through those paces. And so the discussions with the regulators, et cetera, led to the fact that Binance decided that they would establish their global compliance headquarters in Bermuda and employ up to 40 people in Bermuda to do their compliance operations. So for us, that was a huge coup, and there's been other companies that have followed thereafter.
In general, there is often an educational component to this as well, in terms of helping Bermudians, learn about programming and those kinds of things.
Absolutely. From the Binance deal, especially, in addition to them setting up their global compliance headquarters in Bermuda, they committed $10 million to education initiatives inside of Bermuda. So from that perspective, yes, you can clap that. Because education is very important, and that's the challenge with Bermuda. The challenge is that we don't have a huge army of programmers that are just waiting there on the side. So a lot of our talent will have to be imported. But at the same point in time, as we import the talent, we want to make sure that our kids that are in high school, that our students that are overseas in higher education can have an opportunity to come back and learn, and we can also deliver that learning for them in Bermuda. So as soon as this summer, which is just around the corner, we will be offering courses on blockchain, on software development at our Bermuda College to make sure that we skill people up very quickly, and also in the areas of compliance to do that. So it's a very quick march. We're going to have to do it very quickly, but the beauty of having a small country government is that you can basically pick your priorities very simply and execute them in a very quick fashion.
So just by the way, if you've had a long day working in your blockchain business and you want to go have one of those rum drinks, can you buy it with a cryptocurrency?
You cannot buy them with cryptocurrency yet. But I am certain after the passage of Bermuda's Digital Asset Business Act, which we're targeting the passage by June 1st, you will be able to possibly buy it with cryptocurrency.
Oh, yeah?
I'm sure you will be able to.
And will I look forward to that.
Yes.
I'm already thirsty. Will there ever come a time when Bermuda would consider issuing its own digital currency?
Rob, you like asking me this question. You like asking this question. Let me try to step that back, because I think it might be helpful for those persons who are listening to understand the stages of which we've gone in. So our fintech vision basically has 4 steps. The first step was dealing with the issuance of digital assets and the companies who want to issue digital assets. So that bill was passed and is finalized. The second step is the Digital Asset Business Act, which was introduced today and which will be debated in Parliament in a few weeks and then will be passed shortly thereafter. The third step, and where we're going to, is the whole issue of, which is a challenging and vexing issue, and one of the things in which we were discussing in Italy was this whole issue of identity. And how do you do identity, and how identity is central to making sure that these type of systems work, both at a national level and at an international level when we're talking about trying to make sure there's interoperability amongst various systems. So that was a good discussion, and there were things discussed that I believe that consensus is certainly a part of, the Identity Foundation, and talking about how we're going to move those items forward. So our third part is identity, where we're going to introduce a national identity system on the blockchain to do things that, just the simple things. In Bermuda, the biggest frustration, because we're so heavily regulated, the biggest frustration in Bermuda is that the banks require you to take a photocopy of your passport and your bill and everything every year. And even when you email it to them and you get a read receipt on the email, people still do that, by the way. If you put a read receipt on the email, they'll say, oh, we didn't get it, and it's a very painful process. So we're trying to show use cases and examples of how we can use blockchain, put our national identity there, so we only have to do that one time. And I think that it will give us the benefits also of reducing the cost of compliance in our economy, which will, of course, lead to greater efficiencies and better performance. And then the final part, Rob, is, as you said, we will be examining what we are going to do in the area of central bank. We don't technically have a central bank, but central bank digital currency. And that, of course, is something that, as I say, the graybeards, of course, get very nervous about. But that's a good thing. And it's a good thing. It's good to have that healthy tension. It's good to have my youthful exuberance balance against more sober and studied reflection, making sure that you take into account all the various risks. So that is being studied right now. It has not been endorsed by our cabinet. It's something that we're looking at. It's the 4th stage of the plan, but right now we're more focused on stages 1, 2, and 3.
The identity piece that you were talking about, I think, is quite interesting. I had not given that as much consideration as I should have, possibly until I heard Joe Lubin yesterday at the Fluidity Summit talking about it, and then he mentioned it today, and others as well. And it just makes me think that maybe a place like Bermuda, for its size, becomes a little bit of a laboratory for these kinds of projects.
Well, absolutely. And what I often say is that from the Bermuda perspective, there are many countries that will have incubators. There'll be many countries that will have, this accelerator here, this accelerator, all the rest. The way that I look at it is that my entire country is that incubator. And so if you are looking to find a place where you want to develop a product, where you can literally test it out in an entire ecosystem, because we are 65,000 people, 20 square miles. We have the highest internet penetration rates in the world, the first country that has the ability to put fiber into every single house. We have it all piped through, the electricity, everything. So what I'm saying is that from the Bermuda perspective, the infrastructure is there. So if you are looking at saying, I have a project that I think can work and I want to see what it can look like, build it so you can get it perfect, and then you can completely scale it from the Bermuda platform. So that's where we're looking to position Bermuda, and we've done it before in insurance, so we just feel that we can do it on this side as well.
Do you see a global competition for attracting these kinds of businesses, this kind of thing? I mean, looking around over the past year, I guess I would divide the world into countries that are scared of cryptocurrencies and worried that it's going to destabilize things, and others that embrace it. And you're obviously in the second category. But how do you see, from a global perspective, see this developing, and who do you see as your biggest sovereign competitor?
Well, I will give the politically correct answer that everyone is expecting. I'll say no one's our competitor, of course, but there are competitors out there, and there's a lot of people that are doing lots of things in different spaces. And the fact is that Bermuda won't work for everyone. If you want to be close to the United States, if it's something that you want to be a part of, then Bermuda may work, but you may have a different strategy, a different market, you might feel a different way. So it might be somewhere like Singapore where you want to innovate, or it might be somewhere inside of the European Union. But from the perspective of where Bermuda stands, as I said, Bermuda has a unique position. So if there is one of our competitors, a competitor would certainly be, Crypto Valley over in Zug in Switzerland. But that's the only place that I can say can match Bermuda's regulatory heft. Because, as I said, it's just Bermuda and Switzerland that have that regulatory equivalence and that recognition from the United States regulators and also the regulators in the European Union. But there's another thing that I like to say. And I remember there was, when we were going through all of this, and my team was all getting nervous because they're like, oh, look what this country's doing, and look what this country's doing, and look what this country's doing, and all the rest. A lot of people can talk about what they may be doing in the future. Bermuda has actually done it. So we are the first, and so that's what it is. So people are saying, oh, we will be looking to do these regulations. Oh, we're looking to introduce, this will be coming in the future. Anyone can right now go on the internet and go to parliament.bm and see our Digital Asset Business Act as tabled today. It is done, it is written, and they can understand what it will look like if they want to operate in the Bermuda space.
I think one of the things that I found a little bit surprising covering this business over the past year, a little bit less, is that there's a little bit of a disconnect or a dichotomy between the fact that people, Satoshi came up with Bitcoin in part because of distrust of banks and government and that kind of thing. And yet what I hear over and over and over is people saying there's a need for regulation and there's a desire for clarity from regulators. And it seems obvious every sentence that you say is to some extent about regulation as a competitive advantage that you have. But I mean, in dealing with the businesses, what are they saying to you about what they want from regulators?
Businesses who see the crypto space as a way forward, to build a better world, to make sure that we fix some of the problems of which have existed, which are a little bit more difficult to fix before, but are probably made easier, recognize that it will not be successful if there are the bad actors that exist that will taint it for the rest of the people who are actually trying to live out the mission of building that better world. And so from that perspective, that is, I think, where the regulation is welcome. And it's not from the perspective of people saying, oh, we want to cut everything down or constrain it all. It's coming from the perspective of we just want to have the rules that can operate so that people can feel comfortable in investing, so that people can feel comfortable in building, and that people can feel comfortable being consuming the service of which is being offered. And I think from that perspective is where the regulation is being looked at. And so countries that get it right will be successful, and countries that seem to think that you can, stop the internet won't succeed for a while.
I don't think that internet thing is really going to catch on.
Pardon me?
That internet thing, it's not going to catch on. It's a fad. It's like the Beatles.
Yes. It's almost like, yes, everyone will laugh at me I'll tell a joke so everyone will laugh at me very quickly right now. That I am one of the few people in the world that still own a BlackBerry, and I use it with pride. But when you say that whole thing about yes, when you say that, oh boy, you put me in the same set as Hillary Clinton, Rob. Oh boy, now you make me feel old. But what I will say is that when you say that whole thing about the internet not catching on, that's the challenge. Because I will always tell people about the example of way back when at Research in Motion, they went to them and say, we need to put phones on our cameras, or phones inside, cameras inside of our phones. And that was what they said. They're like, no one wants exactly, no one wants a camera on a phone. So you cannot understand where innovation is going to go. You just need to make sure that you can be a jurisdiction where people can feel free to innovate. And I think that's the message of which we're trying to do with Bermuda. That's what we're trying to position Bermuda as, that place where you can feel free to come, to innovate, and to build the products and services that are going to service the new world.
Now, I must confess, I did not follow your campaign closely. It was last year, right?
Yes.
But do you have opponents? I mean, who question the wisdom of the strategy? I mean, it seems to me that as a journalist, it's very unusual for me to cover a story where literally half of the people think it's going to change the world forever. It's going to transform every aspect of life, and the other half of the people are Nouriel Roubini, and they think that it's going to just going to be at best a disaster, and at worst, I don't know, the apocalypse. It's a giant Ponzi scheme or whatever. As you walk down the street, people say, stop with that blockchain thing, Premier.
Yes, absolutely. But the challenge is that, and I think that's part of why summits like this work. I think that's why the education piece is important. And I think that's why it's important that people can understand. The people inside of our regulator didn't understand it until we got people there to explain it to them, and then they got it, so they understood that it can work. The whole thing about, with crypto, well, you can't trace people, so it's, all the rest. That it's anonymous and different things. This is the education that is required for those persons. But you ask if there are people who criticize. Yeah, I mean, I was criticized in Parliament in my absence today by the former premier of going down this road. But the thing is that, not to sound but scared money doesn't make money. The fact is that you have to, in an economy, in a place like Bermuda, where we've always innovated, if we're not going to try to take the lead, then we'll watch others take the lead from us, and that's not where we want to position our country.
Could you talk a little bit about some of the other the companies or the other initiatives that have come in and wanted to take advantage of this space?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a number of companies. I don't have that list for you right now. I know that the other day we had an MOU with I want to get it right, Medici, which is Dr. Patrick Byrne at Overstock.com. They do lots of investments inside of this space, and they're going to use Bermuda as a hub for innovation as well. There'll be some announcements that we'll probably be making soon, in addition to some announcements next week of additional MOUs to be signed of people who are going to come to the Bermuda space. But we encourage persons, and I know there's a number of entrepreneurs here. You're feel free to chat with me. I will be around for just a little bit of time until they, the Bermuda space is there, and I'm not here to advertise on the Consensus platform, but if you want to find out more of what's taking place in Bermuda, you can just check us out at fintech.bm. It's a simple website, not hard to learn, fintech.bm, and it will literally show all of the stuff of which we are doing inside of our ecosystem. And you can get in touch with us and you can find out. And as I said, it's 90 minutes from wheels up to wheels down from JFK, so you could be there. The commute, sometimes it takes you longer to get to the airport than it does to take when you actually get on the plane.
And you're also the finance minister?
I am.
Yeah. And so you obviously have a finance background. That's how you come at it. And you said you also have a tech background as well?
Yes, I do have a tech background. I came back to Bermuda in 2003, and I started a IT consulting company in 2004. But my entire adult life, since I remember way back when I got my first, I think it was a Tandy PC in 1993 from Sears, and it was a 486 SX2, and I was all excited and those different things. And so I've always been a tech person, and I think that's why this is so exciting for me, to be able to be in a position where you can move an entire country to look to adopt things as well. So the opportunities of which you're talking about, one of the companies that are out of Bermuda, which is called Trunomi, which is going to be working on our national identity system, is going to be teaming up with a company out of Canada, and we'll be making a formal announcement on that next week. Oh. But in that space, what we're doing is, how do we make government more efficient? Because it's difficult to innovate at the level of the federal government in the United States, but as I said, in Bermuda with 65,000, you can innovate very quickly.
Well, on that point, one of the things that people constantly pitch stories about is real estate on the blockchain.
Yes.
And to some extent, it makes obvious sense. It's clearly a good idea. One of the things holding back America is 50 states and thousands of counties that have very specific rules and laws. But is this something? And so we have the best intentions, but it's probably going to be a while before we do that. But do you see putting Bermuda real estate on the blockchain?
Absolutely. Our government is examining an MOU right now with, I believe it's Bitfury, to put our land title registry on the blockchain. Oh. So we're actually we made that announcement when I was at Davos. We've pushed that issue forward. Bitfury were some of the people who actually flew from Davos over to Bermuda as part of that thing to chart where we're going to go. So so they're involved in that project, and so that project is certainly moving forward.
And do you hear from multinational organizations like the OECD or from the IMF or those kinds of organizations about what you're doing, making sure that you're, in compliance with international laws, or able to offer advice maybe to other developing nations?
Well, we're certainly going to be looking to offer advice. Of course, Bermuda, although we're not actually in the Caribbean, we consider ourselves part of the Caribbean. So at the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting, I'm going to try to get blockchain on the agenda for the CARICOM countries. In addition to that, one of our advisors actually works closely with the OECD. So we are talking with the OECD about using Bermuda as a lab and showing how that could assist in other places if there's things that they're looking to do from either the regulatory perspective or the innovation perspective, it can be used. But we certainly look forward to trying to work with international organizations, but Bermuda is a very small place, and as you well know, Rob, unfortunately we are not an independent country, so we're not a member of the UN or all the rest, so we have to, we can't do too much.
There have been several presentations today, and one of the things that I find most interesting about cryptocurrencies is the opportunities that they present to countries where there's lack of confidence in their own currency and their own governments and their own central banks. Venezuela comes to mind, Zimbabwe comes to mind. They don't even have a currency, Zimbabwe. But do you see this as a kind of a new kind of offshore haven, or a way to offer those people protection from their assets? Or?
I certainly think that the space will allow that, but I think it's important. And of course, I will be preaching to the converted here. But I think the work that Consensus is doing, what Joe is doing, what Ethereum is doing, insofar as making sure that we can have this this network, this thing here, that we can use things to make government more accountable, to make systems more accountable, to build trust, to find out ways that you can make things more efficient. I think that it makes sense. And so from that perspective, it's a fear that you would have as a government leader. Because the government leader, eventually, the long-term development of blockchain and making sure that there's trust and making sure there's understanding can see a place where representative politics could almost be something of the past. But the fact is, if it's something that yields to a better world, if it's something that actually makes decision-making more effective, that makes government more accountable, that makes it a better place in which to live, then I think that all of us as leaders would have the responsibility to push towards that direction. Fortunately for me, I have no designs on being in power forever. So in that instance, I'm happy to push that along. And if Bermuda can serve as that example, I'm happy for my country to be that.
Trade finance, is that something that you see? Are there businesses involved in that? Bermuda obviously has a role in transatlantic trade.
I will be honest, that's not something that I've actually looked at this point in time.
Are we ready for the other?
I guess. They told me that I was going to take questions, but
maybe we should do that.
Okay.
So, if anyone has any questions for the Premier of Bermuda, please, you can take.
There's a mic.
I knew there must be a system. Where's a little ad hoc?
The question, do you see any legal breach between ICO and listing in Bermuda Stock Exchange?
Thank you very much. One of the things inside of our actual ICO legislation speaks about the exemptions that are granted if your token is listed on a stock exchange. We are not to the place yet where we will say tokens that are approved under our regulation will have automatic listing on the Bermuda Stock Exchange, but we're working with the Bermuda Stock Exchange to figure out how we're going to advance to that point.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Yeah, I have one here. I'm from Singapore, by the way. Fantastic speech. I'm moving over tomorrow from True Global Ventures. I'm very passionate about insurance, doing blockchain insurance. What you see there, have you kind of started to look into blockchain insurance? You seem to have a fantastic experience in insurance.
Thank you for the question. We're doing a lot of stuff in insurance already. Some of the companies that are in Bermuda, we have new ones that have set up recently that are doing work in insurance. And of course, I mean, it is the ideal thing. When you're building apps on Ethereum that can work in that space, can issue the contracts to make sure that that trust exists, I think it makes sense. And there's a lot of things that is already taking place in Bermuda in that space, and hopefully there'll be more. You're welcome to come and visit.
Tomorrow.
All right.
I'm sure you have a real struggle to get people to get to.
Hi, Premier Burt. Question, you mentioned you're working with Overstock. I just wanted to clarify, is that going to be on the T0 side in terms of security tokens, or is that for the Medici Ventures in terms of real estate?
Okay. Thank you for the question. It's Medici Ventures. Medici Ventures, of course, has, I think it's a subsidiary of Overstock.com, but has investments in a number of different blockchain companies. And so our MOU, as it stated, says that they will use Bermuda as an innovation hub for all of those companies. So it's not just T0, it's other things. But also a part of that MOU is that Medici will look to launch a security token exchange platform in Bermuda, which can come under our Digital Asset Business Act.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bonnie, and I just want to thank you for the discussion that's just happened. I'm based in Australia, and I actually work quite closely with the Australian regulators as a lawyer. And what's really interesting is I feel like most jurisdictions actually adopt a let's wait and see approach, or let's see what the best practice is. So it's actually quite interesting to see that you've actually come out and have already legislated and is in fact quite active in the space. I guess my question is, have other regulators come up to you and have asked you to collaborate and share ideas? And what has been their response to what Bermuda has been doing?
Thank you for the question. From the regulatory perspective, I cannot speak specifically to that, as in Bermuda, though the Minister of Finance technically is above the regulator is separate in itself, so I'm not certain of the conversations that the regulators have had with other persons. What I can say is that our regulatory advisor is actually from Australia. And so she's been helping. So I know that we've done things with Australia. I know that she's done things with Mauritius. I know that she's done things. So there is that informal communication communication is going on as to what other countries are doing, but I can't speak to the specifics of what our BMA has done with either the SEC or other financial services regulators, MAS in Singapore and otherwise.
I guess this is more of a comment, but I think that a lot of people would say that this is actually a very positive step because it's actually a step in the right direction where you attempt to actually give clear guidance, which I think until now that's actually baffled most lawyers. And I think that even lawyers amongst themselves would disagree with the same documents that they see about whether or not it's a security or financial product. And I think that there is really some grey areas in it. So I just want to thank you for your work, and I'll definitely be telling my connections about this. So thank you.
Absolutely. I thank you very much, and I agree that regulatory certainty is important. And I think that's the only way that the community is going to be able to move forward. We're not going to try to overregulate anything. We have our rules. It's to make sure that you don't engage in money laundering and criminal activity. But as long as you're doing things on a regular basis, which works for the world, then it's an excellent place.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anything else?
First of all, I have to say you're doing a great job in terms of building the structure that we need in this ecosphere. The question that I have for you is quite simply, what type of background systems are you going to put in place to help projects moving to Bermuda in terms of developers, in terms of people who can help out with angel financing, all of those things?
Excellent. That's an excellent question. Two things. From our platforms and the innovation platforms as well, we have money that is lined up for people who want to. So part of the Binance deal, for example, was committing $5 million in support from Binance Labs to Bermuda-based startups that will take place, Bermuda-based blockchain companies. So that's something that's actually happened. There's been other persons who have committed to funding startups in Bermuda. In addition, we've also changed or set in place a new immigration policy that will allow new startup companies in the fintech space to have automatic approval for work permits up to 5 persons as long as they are employing Bermudians at the same time and supporting their training and development. So we are trying to build that ecosystem, and we recognize that we don't have it there, but what Bermuda has always done is that we've always been a place where intellectual capital can come, where they can get to learn with one another, to build with one another, and to make things better. So from that perspective, we're putting the entire suite in place. And all of that information can be found on fintech.bm.
That's absolutely wonderful. And I got to say, Canada, look out, because I'm going to Bermuda.
Yeah, gotcha. Oh, sorry. Behind us.
Oh, sorry, I wanted to thank you very much. Well, one question I wanted to ask very quickly was, can you say more about how Bermuda drives tax incentives for ventures that are in the Commonwealth? So Canada, for instance, if they're fostering their fintech startup out of Bermuda, how does the incentives for launching an ICO there line up with the tax incentives?
I think you asked a tax question?
Yes.
The tax question, Bermuda is a tax-neutral jurisdiction. And Bermuda being a tax-neutral jurisdiction, you're laughing at me when I said that. No, we have lots of tax in Bermuda. I can assure you that none of my citizens believe that they are under tax. Our citizens are business. There certainly are taxes in Bermuda, but our tax structure is different than other places, so we do not have income tax, either personal income tax or corporate income tax. That does not mean that companies do not pay taxes. You pay taxes on your labor, wages, and otherwise. But from the perspective of international cooperation, Bermuda is one of the leaders in international tax cooperation. Because we are of that high standard, money and accounts that are set up in Bermuda are automatically reported to home countries. So if you are a Canadian citizen, if you own something in Bermuda, you're the beneficial owner of a company, that information and your holdings is reported to the Canadian government or 127 other governments of which we have that treaty arrangement with.
Got it. And then are there any incentives, like tax incentives or tax credits for doing fintech innovation in Bermuda?
No, there are not tax incentives or tax things. What it is that we have that environment that's there. Clearly, there are tax advantages or there are tax differentials from the Bermuda space, but we do not offer specific tax incentives for fintech companies, no.
Thank you.
No problem.
So I think we should move to the next phase, which is you have a surprise announcement.
Yes.
I'm always happy to report there's news. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Mr. Gordon Brander. Hi, welcome.
Hello.
See,
Please.
all right. I'm gonna let
And
the-
hello, everyone out there.
So you are here to announce a memorandum of understanding, I guess, with the premier and a new business in Bermuda that's going to be really important, I think.
Very much, in some esteemed company. Very, very proud to be announcing an MOU with the government of Bermuda. Three things I think stand out about Bermuda for me as a jurisdiction. The first is, in general, just the incredible pace and intelligence that Bermuda has had in leaning forward into this space, in managing to craft and hopefully very soon pass legislation extremely quickly, but also extremely thoughtfully, and with an eye to Bermuda's reputation as an international jurisdiction. And so sort of on the general level, I think, of all of the countries that are competing for this, I've been most impressed by the approach that Bermuda's taken. Secondly, and more specifically for what Omega One wants to be doing in Bermuda, the key issue that is preventing institutional adoption of digital assets is the security issue that we basically push the security risk of assets to the ownership of private keys, and then custodying these private keys becomes the risk point of the entire network. And as all assets become digital assets over the next decade, this is not a multi-$100 billion problem as it is now. It becomes a multi-trillion, potentially even quadrillion-dollar problem. And so digital asset custodians are going to need to scale up, but also the insurance industry is going to need to actually insure these custodians and are absolutely not in a position to handle that scale as they're currently structured. So the Premier and I have been discussing the creation of a digital custody union that is based in Bermuda, where custodians are able to come together and mutually insure each other against risk, and then we can pass off the additional risk to the reinsurance industry that is obviously so heavily based in Bermuda. And this does a few things. It not only creates greater safety in the digital asset world, and at a much better price than is offered by insurance companies right now, it provides another sort of flow back into the traditional financial world. Sort of the exhaust fumes of the crypto ecosystem become essentially $1 trillion bond issuance for the traditional financial system. And then the third thing that is, to me, great about Bermuda in this context is that the world in general needs an on-ramp where physical assets can be housed in a safe, legal, and technical and financial jurisdiction, while their sort of dematerialized versions travel around this global liquidity mesh that we're all building. And Bermuda is the obvious portal that I can see for bringing the physical world into the digital world. So,
just a question about what you're doing. The custody issue is one that comes up a lot.
Absolutely.
As one of the building blocks that's necessary to sort of bring digital assets into the broader financial world.
Yeah.
In Bermuda or in general, how do you see the sort of all the pieces coming together? If you're there to provide custody, what else is going to be needed?
Well, interestingly, I mean, Omega One is not a core custody platform. We started out trying to build the trading platform, institutional grade trading platform for crypto, and then realized that we weren't going to be able to onboard institutions in the space if we didn't have an institutional grade custody layer underneath it. But we're looking to build an entire virtual financial system, and all aspects of it essentially play into not just the position of Bermuda, but actually the specifics that they've been foresighted enough to put into the legislation. And particularly, I think it's great that it's not the Cryptocurrency Business Act. This is understanding that all assets are going to become digital assets, and so really paving a framework for the whole.
How is it that Bermuda got onto your radar as you were doing this?
I was invited down to Bermuda by some other folks who've been having conversations with the Bermudan government. The Prime Minister and his folks have been tireless in the last few months around the crypto circuit. And I went down, I was fascinated by the position of Bermuda in the ecosystem, in the traditional ecosystem, but didn't expect to actually meet folks down there who understood digital currencies in the way that these guys do. So I think it's a very unusual combination of the jurisdiction, but also the deep understanding of technology.
The same question for you that I had for the Premier earlier. Who do you see as your competitors? Are the traditional custody providers looking at digital in this field now?
So, I think traditional custody providers are definitely moving into the digital asset space. Across the whole financial stack, people are moving into digital assets. I don't see them as competitors for what we're doing, because our intent is to create a win-win ecosystem that everybody wants to participate in. We just want to make the job of digital asset custody better for everyone.
Well, the only thing I would say is, Rob, is that from the Bermuda perspective, it's great to have worked with Alex. It's great to have spoke with Alex, and I'm very excited that Alex wants to do what he's looking to do with solving this problem, because there are problems that need to be solved for the wider adoption of digital assets. And we are pleased to work with him in looking to solve this problem. We believe that Bermuda is the ideal place for exactly the reasons what Alex said, especially when it comes to the huge insurance market that already exists inside of Bermuda. It's an ideal space. It's a space for growth for that market, but it's also to solve a problem which can enable a wider adoption of digital assets. So it's great to work with him. We look forward to working with Consensus overall, and to just speed the adoption of these things throughout society.
It really seems like the sort of missing piece that we were talking about earlier with the connection with the reinsurance industry.
Yeah, Bermuda has the number, I think, $8 million of reinsurance assets per inhabitant. So in terms of finding a jurisdiction where holding assets securely through all of the pieces of the framework that are not digitized is concerned, there's not a better place in the world.
Excellent. Well, thank
Perfect.
You. Well,
Thank
absolute
you.
pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Congratulations. Thanks a lot.